Hi, everybody. How you guys doing today? Happy Friday to everybody. You guys know I had a very challenging week this week. Very challenging. Hold on, I'm just trying to fix something here. Give me 1 second. Had a very challenging week this week. You guys know that my daughter moved out. Had a very challenging week this week. You guys know that my moved out this week, and she just sprung it on me all at one time. She moved out on Wednesday and told me on Wednesday. So, I wasn't ready for that. And so, I got tied up in my emotions and stuff like that. So I had to get myself together and allow her to go into her next chapter of her life, of her moving out, because she moved to Los Angeles. And hold on for 1 second. She moved to Los Angeles, and I know it was hard on her because coming from where I live at going into Los Angeles, that's like a 2-hour drive with traffic and everything. So I said, Lord, let me allow her to come into her own. So in the midst of that, we helping her move and stuff like that. And I'm crying. If she would have told me that she was gonna move out, I would have tried to talk her out of it. So I'm glad that God allowed her to move out like she did, how she did it, because I would have tried to talk her out of it. So Wednesday I was gonna come live, but I decided, I'm not gonna come live. But hey, everybody, let me get in these chats. Hey, in the safe zone, thank you. Hey, Shellac, Queen T. Hey, Tracy 411. Thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate everybody. So in the midst of me helping her, me and my daughter lifting this big old refrigerator up her staircase, and three women trying to help her move into her apartment last night. And I got really tired. And on the way home, I was gonna do a live, but I said no, I'm too tired, so I'll come today and do it. But as you guys can see, my title is Never Judging a Book by Its Cover. you know, um, I was thinking about that because I was listening to a lot of people on YouTube last night coming home, and I was listening to, people, prejudging people, not really knowing who that person is, not giving them a chance to be able to learn who they are. And I was thinking about, I said, God, you know something? If you put a bunch of people in a big old pool, all these YouTubers, and don't tell them who they are, I guarantee you half of these people would like each other. If you never tell them who they are, half of these people would really like each other, which gets me to my next sermon, which gets me to my next chapter of what I'm talking about, because I'm guilty of that too. I was thinking about it the other day as I was driving home. I was changing churches, and I never forget this. I was going from my one church going into another church, and a friend of mine invited me to her church, and so I went because it was friends and family night. So I ended up going over to her church and visiting her church, and I ended up liking the church. And when I got there at the church, it was the next day I came back, it was this particular girl that for some reason I just didn't like her. And I cannot even tell you guys for the life of it why I didn't like this young lady, but I just didn't like this young lady. And I didn't like the fact that she was calling me a woman of God, because at that particular time I didn't feel like a woman of God, but she kept calling me a woman of God. And I was like, I just didn't like her. And I remember one time I went home and I was questioning myself. I was like, dang, why don't you like her? Because I couldn't figure out for the life of me why I didn't, because she never ever did anything to me. It was just looking at her and already prejudging her and not even giving her a chance. So I remember I went home and I came back to church one day, because my church is inspiring, it's a reaction channel, it's to uplift somebody and to pour in somebody's life and let you guys know that God is able. So anyway, I went home and I thought about the reason why I didn't like her. And I was going through something in my life. And so I went back to church the next day, and I kind of got there kind of early, and they was having morning prayer. And I walked into the room because I was going something. I needed a word from God at that time. And I walked into the prayer service, and I sat down in the chair and I had my head down, and the young lady who I didn't like was praying. She was leading the prayer. And do you know, this young lady every single thing that I was going through, it's like somebody gave her a grocery list. She was speaking that word back into my life. She was speaking everything I was going through. And I had to look up and see who was really praying, because I had to really look up, because I was like, wait a minute. And it made my outlook on this young lady totally different, because I was able to look up and see God. I was able to look past her and look and see God. And you know how you can count yourself out of a blessing, like count yourself out of a blessing before God even make it come manifested? Because I was about to forfeit my blessing from this girl speaking in my dead area by judging her by the book, not even allowing her to minister into my situation, that God used her. And what let me tell you something. This is one of the sweetest young women. She's not an older woman. She's a young woman. She's a good provider for her kids. She's a good wife to her husband. I mean, she's the type of young sister that when you get to the church house, she praying for you even before you get there. And when she pray for you, you can feel her anointing, because her prayers are just so positive and so passionate that when she praying, it's just like tears running down her eyes. And I have never ever told her about this. And I seen her last Sunday, and I asked her, I said, you know something? I'm gonna need you to come to my YouTube channel. I told her I'm gonna need you to come to you. So she's hearing this for the first time, because I never ever told her about this situation. So she's definitely getting firsthand on this, me telling you guys this testimony of judging a book by its cover. Never, because never knowing what God has for you through that person. You can prejudge a person and never know the gift that God has for you out of that person, that that person can pour into your life. You can be in a dead situation, and God is pouring something in to be able to resonate that dead situation that you're going through. So you got to trust God in areas where you're not willing to trust God at, because it's just so much that we feel like, well, you don't understand, this person is saying stuff that's not true about me. God knows everything that's going on. He knows everything that's going on. It's nothing hidden from God. He knows everything. He knows the situation better than we know it sometimes. We just got to trust him through the process. Trust him through the process. He said a good man falls 7 times 7, but he gets up. He gets up. A good man gets up. He never allows to stay in his situation. And it takes me to another situation where people say, God said, I'll make your enemy your footstool. But people taste that and don't know that it's levels to that. It's levels to that. It's levels to that. When God said, I'll make your enemy your footstool, and he said, revenge is mine, is levels in that. Hey, let me come back and say hey to everybody. Hey, Miss Hennessy, how you doing? Hey, Tracy 411, how you guys doing today? Thank you guys for coming into my chat. But I'm going to get into the next area of what I'm talking about. When I said God will make your enemies your footstool, is levels to that, because I was going through another situation. I'm sharing some a personal testimony right now that I wasn't able to, I didn't want to share, but God is pressing it upon my heart that I'm going to share this with everybody. It was a situation of he made me really respect the part of I'll make your enemies a footstool, because he didn't want me to be boasting in it. When God show you, when he show you who he is in a situation, sometimes you get in self, and you get self gratification, and he wants to get the glory out of your situation. So he brings you through it, but he wants you to understand what that situation means. I was going through a situation in my life. I'll never forget this. I was going through a real hard situation in my life, to where I was going to court. I was in and out of court for like almost about a half a year, in and out of court. I was going in and out, and I was living up right before God. I was praying, I was fasting, I was giving God all the glory through the situation. Now, I know this person was really hitting me hard. Like this person was really, really hitting me hard in this situation because I was the one living upright. I was the one praying. I was the one fasting. I was the one believing for God to heal the situation. And this person was just, they wasn't living right. And I knew they wasn't living right. And I knew what they were saying about me was a lie. I knew it was hurting me, but I was going through it. I was really going through it. And I would go to court and I would leave out of the courtroom. And have you ever felt so defeated? Like when you leave out of something, you just feel defeated in your spirit. Like you really feel like you just defeated. And I was leaving out the courtroom feeling defeated, getting in my car, crying, tears rolling down my eyes. I'm like, Lord, I'm the one who's living upright. I'm the one who's serving you. I'm the one who's getting out there ministering. I'm the one who's doing all this. I'm doing everything that you tell me to do, but you just feel defeated. Like you feel like you in your designated area, like nothing is going right, even though you're the one living upright, even though you're the one standing on God's glory, even though you're the one that believe in God for healing. But every time I would go in the courtroom, they would grant this person every single thing that they wanted. They would grant them every single thing that they wanted. And I was like going into the courtroom, it was like I wasn't even there. Anything that person asked for and they was coming against me hard, the judge was granting it to him. And I would walk out the courtroom feeling defeated. And I remember one time getting on the elevator and because we was court was on the fourth floor. I remember one time getting on this elevator and this really nice looking black woman got on the elevator. When I mean she was beautiful, she smelled good, she had her briefcase, she was just beautiful. And she got on the elevator and me and her was going down the elevator. The time that elevator got to the last floor of me and her getting off, that lady I was able to attain her as a lawyer almost pro bono. That's how good God was. He's seen everything. He's seen everything I was going through. I attained her for a lawyer almost pro bono, almost nothing. She took my case. And I remember walking back into the courtroom a month later with her. Not only did God turn that situation around, but everything that lawyer asked for, God granted it to me. Even things I didn't even ask for, God granted it to me. But he had to get me to see that I'll make your enemies a footstool because see, I would have got gratification. I would have been like, yeah, yeah, that's what you get. But he had to humble my spirit in order for me to catch home to the real blessing that he was trying to get me to see. Because there's levels of stuff that we think that God is doing. See, God don't work on our time. God doesn't God doesn't move when we want him to move. He moves when we feel that he moves when we feel that he's ready for us because he cleans us up first. He cleans us up first. He makes us be able to handle that because sometimes he got to humble us because sometimes we get into self and we believe that self is doing it and not God is doing it. And he had to take me through that in order to be able to really appreciate what he was doing in my life. And when he said he'll make your enemies a footstool, believe me, he will do it if you stand on that word and don't get into self and think self is doing it and know that God is doing it. Know that God is doing it because I could have easily at the court, yeah, that's what you get. But I walked away. I walked away. I walked away with self gratification, but knowing who did it. But knowing who did it. I didn't ever say anything to him in the courtroom, but once I got into my car, that's where my victory began to shout at. That's where my victory and that same person that was putting me through it come had to come back and apologize to me. And not only had to come back and apologize, needed my help. That person needed my help in his dead situation. Let me say hi to some of these people. Thank you, Tip World, for tuning in. Thank you so much. Um, wow, thank you guys so much. I'm trying to get the hang of this stuff, so bear with me. Jersey Girl, I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to hear you earlier. But thank you guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for listening to my eyes. But to get back to my story, God, God allowed this situation for me to be able to pour into other people's lives, because there's some people in the midst of their storm and God wants them to know that he's able. He's able. In your weakest hour, he is able, because it really took me to where I am now, but it really got me to believe that God can resonate dead areas in your life. It doesn't what it looks like is not the outcome on it. God wants you to get to a place to where you know it's him and not self, because sometimes we get in the midst of self and believe we're doing it and take God's hand off of it, and then we don't experience the lesson that we're learning in the midst of our storm. So even though we're standing and believing God for that situation, know that God will take you through some trials for you can know it's him and not you. And he had to take my hand off that situation. As much as I wanted my hand on it, as much as I knew I was the person that was doing right, I was the person that was living right, I was the person that was praying to keep the marriage, because I wanted to keep the marriage in place. I didn't want God to end it, because I wanted to raise my kids with their dad, because I've been with my ex-husband since the ninth grade of high school, and I was praying to keep that marriage together. So even though the judge granted me everything, he granted me everything that I asked for, and things that I didn't ask for, he granted them to me. He also chastised my husband in court. He also chastised him in court, to where he understood that, you know, to where he understood that you can't do this. You can't do this. And I didn't even have to say a word for him, because God fought my battles. But you knew I was standing for that marriage, but God knew I was praying and standing for that marriage. And I never forget going home. And I was like, okay, it's over with. Now let me start my next chapter of my life. So 6 months later, my lawyer that I had, the lady that I tamed, called me 6 months later, and she said, Delane, but remember, I was standing for my marriage. She called me, she said, I want to tell you this because your divorce did not go through. I'm like, I'm thinking, I'm looking at her like, okay, but you a high power attorney, well recognized in my county. And she said, your divorce didn't go through. So you know I was praying to keep it together. And you see how God kept that thing together. He kept it together even though I knew my back was in the wall, and I was praying for God to keep that situation together. I was believing God to keep it together, but I also was going through the process feeling defeated. But in the midst of my storm, in the midst of my not allowing the enemy to take my eyes and get self gratification and say, I got everything I want, he still kept that one thing that I was standing believing God for together. So it's some people in here right now that needs to hear this, that God got you. Even in your weakest moment, in your driest hour, God has got you right where you need to be, right where you need to be. Don't ever question where you at in life, because God got you. And it doesn't matter where you start off at, it's where you end up. It's where you end. You got to trust God. You got to really trust God in some dead situations, because I'm still learning. I am not where I used to be, but I'm clawing my way back every day to where I need to be, to where I need to be. And I listen to some of these people on here. I listen to a lot of this stuff that goes on the YouTube, and I think to myself that, God, I have you. And I was one night, let me get back because I'm kind of studying over myself. One night I was on this YouTube channel, I was searching, and I seen this channel one night. I'll never forget this. It just popped up in my timeline. And I was like, Roz is no joke to be played with, because Roz was came onto somebody panel, and she was arguing with them people on that panel. She was getting her words in. She was like, I'm gonna check everybody. And she came on this panel by herself, and she was telling them off. They was arguing back with her. And I was like, dang. And it just popped up on my feeder. And I went back to see who that channel was, because I wanted to see the person who was on that channel. And do you know, when I started going through her timeline, I was like, dang, she changed her whole entire entire life around in the front of arena, in front of everybody on YouTube. She is preaching, she is uplifting now. She is she is like a prophetess now. I was just looking at her channel. I was like, dang, God to take nothing and turn it around and make it something. So it's not where you start, it's where you end it. It is not where you start, it's where God ended, where you end it. So I just wanted to just bring that because I'm kind of nervous. I don't know why, because I pre-rehearsed this before I came on, and it seemed like what I really wanted to talk about, God got me in another direction. But I just wanted to bring that and start uplifting because I'm not going to be before people very long. I'm going to try to bring the message and be able to leave out. And I'm going to be coming to be acting behind this advocate because after this behind this shield, I call it the shield. I'm gonna be coming after behind this because I want people to see who they're talking to because I think that's really important that they know who's talking to them, that they can look in people's face and really take what they're saying serious. Because I want to be able to stand in my truth, and when I bring my messages, I want people to be able to see who's delivering the message. But like I said, I'm not going to be before you guys very long. I thank you guys for tuning in. This is a very short segment, but I will be coming back with more. And thank you guys, and God bless you guys. And you guys have a good Friday. Thank you so much for tuning in, and God bless you guys.